What's going on, guys? Hopefully everyone's having a very good Monday, good start to their week, and we're getting ready for some Monday night football for tonight. So in this live stream, we're going to go through all of my projections, any injury updates that we've had throughout the day, and some game theory for the slate. So with that being said, let's hop right into it for tonight. Here are our Patreon projections here on the screen. As always, if you're looking for these, if you want updates to my projections live, make sure to join the Patreon to get the latest. With that being said, this is an interesting slate. We've had quite a few things pop up over the last hour. A bunch of guys on the Rams. We already had a COVID situation going on. 3 more were added to the list, including Tyler Higbee, including Jalen Ramsey, both huge players for this team that are going to have lasting impacts, not only for the real game, but also for DFS. Let's talk about Jalen Ramsey first, because he's the biggest load there. Without Jalen Ramsey on that Rams defense, the Cardinals are going to have a track meet on their hands. I mean, he's by far their best defensive player. He really takes apart half of the field, he essentially isolates that whole right side of the field and makes you target the left side. And that's not going to be the case for today. It's not only just his coverage abilities, it's also his ability to tackle. He's one of the best secondary players in the entire NFL at making tackles. So it's going to have a huge impact on the defense. Let's talk about Tyler Higbee next. Higbee being out with COVID means that they don't really have anyone at tight end left. You can see Higbee's the clear number 1 here. They're going to be with Blanton and Hopkins at tight end. Guys that don't even have a catch on the year. I believe Bland might have 1 or 2 targets on the year. Hopkins has played. He's been active, but has not played any snaps. So you're dealing with 2 guys that are extremely inexperienced. Bland's been mostly used as a blocker when he's been brought onto the field. So overall, I don't love either of these 2 options. You can see that they're going to be in my player pool. And that definitely is a hurt to their offense. So overall, the line is still at 50.5 points. The spread is still just -3 for the Cardinals, but I think that those 2 numbers are both wrong. First and foremost, this should be a little bit of a higher scoring game, in my opinion. I think that the Cardinals are very easily going to eclipse over 30 points tonight. And as a result, you're going to be dealing with the Rams playing catch up. And anytime you have that type of game script, you typically see the team that's losing tend to come back into it, right? They get some of that garbage time usage, those touchdowns, that kind of thing. So I think we're looking at a very, very high scoring showdown slate. I mean, these defenses to this point of the year, you probably wouldn't expect that, even though they have been very good on offense. But with the injuries in play, it makes for a very interesting dynamic. The spread probably should be closer to -7 for the Cardinals, maybe even -7.5, that kind of thing. Jalen Ramsey's arguably the best defensive player in the NFL. Him and Aaron Donald, they're both on the same team there. They'll at least have one of them, but that makes a huge difference. Let's talk to the player pool now. Let's talk about the plays for tonight, what this really all means. At the top of the board, Kyler Murray becomes by far my favorite play on the slate. He was already projecting out very well. He was already projecting as the best play on the slate. But now with some of the rushing upside I expect this team to be winning. He becomes a slam dunk play. If I was going to choose a captain between the 2, would definitely be Kyler Murray, because not only does he have the higher implied total for his team, he also has the rushing upside. Matthew Stafford is a stiff. He's not going to go out there and get you a rushing touchdown or something like that. So that really differentiates the 2, in my opinion. Moving on to running back now. I mean, James Conner, he's the only healthy back they have there. Similar situation with the Rams too, with Sony Michel. Darrell Henderson Jr. still in COVID. Chase Edmonds is not going to be activated from IR. So that means that these 2 are going to be running as the heads of their backfield. Benjamin and Sargent are going to be the backups. Benjamin is going to be much more involved in the offense than somebody like a Sargent. Last week, we saw him get a few touches, at least I'm talking about Sargent there, who got a few touches last week. But over 90% of the load at running back was Sony Michel. So I expect that going forward. We saw the blueprint last week. And while the Cardinals have had Edmonds out of the lineup, we already know the blueprint. We're talking the same type of situation, 90+% of the touches for James Conner, which really limits the upside of these 2 backups. If we're going to go to one, I would rather go to Sargent just because he's $600. And at that type of price tag projects for much higher in terms of points per dollar. At wide receiver, though, is where things get very spicy. Again, I expect this to be an extremely high-scoring game. So I'm trying to fit 3 or even 4 of these wide receivers into almost every single lineup. And my favorite option on the slate, because Stafford is still going to be putting up yards, we know that even if they end up getting blown out in this game, they're going to have to try and claw back into it. And this team passes more than any other team in the NFL to begin with. So Cooper Kupp, even though they are in a losing game script, still my favorite play on the slate. He projects for 23 fantasy points, has a true 30, even 35+ point ceiling. mean, we've seen that in showdown slates with the Rams in the past. Even Cooper Kupp at one point had less than 2 points in the first half in the game earlier on the year. I believe it was even the Cardinals game. And then the second half scored like 24 fantasy points. So the guy, if he gets off to a rough start, don't sweat it out too much. He's well too talented to not put up a great score. As of this point of the year, is the #1 fantasy point player outside of quarterbacks in all of 2021. So you could definitely trust him there. He's an extremely high floor, but also the ceiling that we're looking for. DeAndre Hopkins, I'm not as excited about, even though you can pair him with a Kyler Murray. He's obviously the alpha dog over there. The health is a true issue. I mean, the entire year it's been hampering him. He has not looked like himself. And it's not like he can't catch the ball. It's not like he can't still high point balls in the red zone. He's always going to be a touchdown threat. It's those big 80, 90-yard plays that we saw from him in the past. I mean, this guy was an absolute yards after catch monster, much like a Cooper Kupp. And he doesn't have that ability this year. It just comes down to health. Hopefully next year in 2022, he returns to that type of form. So he'll be in my player pool. I'm not a captain, though. Van Jefferson Jr., I am considering using him at captain. He's getting a ton of usage in this Rams offense. He's the clear #2 wide receiver for this team. I hate hearing people in the industry keep saying, like, hey, bro, they brought Odell in to be the #2 wide receiver. That is just not true. Odell cannot block like a Van Jefferson Jr. This is a run-first offense. I am tired of people saying that Odell is going to be the #2. That is just not the case. This guy's going to see 30 to 40% of snaps. It's not like I hate Odell. He's in my player pool. But to say that he's projecting higher than a Van Jefferson Jr., it's just wrong. I mean, the guy's playing 70% of snaps versus 35 to 40. How the hell do you think he's going to project as higher? I mean, you're talking about similar usage rates, similar efficiencies in terms of their yards per catch, everything like that. It's just blasphemous. It just shows that whoever's saying that has no idea what they're talking about. Rant over, though. Still like both options. If we're going to use one at captain, Van Jefferson Jr. is the obvious option. He's playing more snaps. He's been extremely effective. And overall, in terms of fantasy point production, is blowing OBJ out of the water. I seriously don't understand what I'm not going to call him out, but there's people out in the industry, big websites too, touting Odell over Van Jefferson Jr., which is blasphemous. Let's move on to some of these guys on the Cardinals, because to be honest with you, this is where the real playmakers are going to be. I mean, we have a higher over-under for this team. It's our higher implied total for the Cardinals. And overall, I expect them to be a little bit more effective, and they're lower priced. You can see Van Jefferson Jr. and Odell, $8,000 and $6,200 respectively. #2 wide receiver for the Cardinals, $5,600. #3, $4,800, right? So you're getting a lot of savings here. You have a higher implied over-under. Really don't have to overthink it. Even though they haven't had massive usage this year, because they do have 4 really solid wide receivers over there in Arizona, it gets spread out a little bit, right? You never really know who's going to be the #1 wide receiver in terms of their usage rate. If DeAndre Hopkins was back to 100%, we know it would be him every single week. But as a result, we're having someone step up week in and week out. And while that's going to make people a little bit hesitant to go out and try to really hammer down on some of these plays, it becomes a huge GPP type of, what's the word for it? It's an interesting situation for GPPs, right? You're going to get lower ownership than you should on a Christian Kirk, an AJ Green, a Rondale Moore, and all 3 of them could very well go out for 20, even 25 fantasy points tonight. So the way that I'm handling this situation is that we have these 4 wide receivers for the Cardinals. I want at least 2 of them in every single lineup with a max of 3. It's a very simple lineup construction there. That's what I'm going to be going with for tonight, particularly because I think that Kyler Murray just absolutely lights them up tonight. Let's move on to tight end. And there's also a reason why I want to try to prioritize as many of these guys in this range as possible. It's just because they're really good in terms of points per dollar. I mean, we're talking 2.4, 2.3, 2.0x. A running back, 1.7. Obviously Sony Michel looks pretty good there. But outside that, not many options at running back, or even over here at tight end. Outside these pure punt play options at the bottom of the board, just nothing's really flying off the board. Whereas at wide receiver, these guys are projecting for good median projections, but also good ceilings. At tight end, really like Zach Ertz, really don't like any of these options over there for the LA Rams. Again, they've hardly played any snaps to this point of the year. And I think it is much more likely that they try and just use these tight ends as blockers today and rely on those wide receivers. So that's my take there. Zach Ertz has been excellent since playing for the Cardinals. I expect that to continue going forward. The defenses, I want no part of tonight. I'm expecting there to be over 55, 65, maybe even 70 points scored tonight. I do not want to be a part of that at all. At kicker, I really like both options. If we're expecting a ton of points to be scored, there's going to be a ton of points scored by these kickers. Taking a kicker at captain is the dumbest thing in human history, by the way. That's all we've got here for the slate tonight, guys. Good luck with all of your lineups. If you have any questions, anyone you want some clarity about, or a little bit of a deeper dive on, go ahead and leave it in the chat and I'll get to that when I see it. But until then, guys, peace out, and we'll be back for a Thursday night live.